Hello and welcome to Deep Sea. This is the channel for innovative cartomancy and astrology. And finally, this is my first video on astrology, and it's going to be a different subject than you might be used to, because I will be talking about asteroids or minor planets, which is the same thing, but minor planets is a little bit more politically correct, I think. So there you have it. The subject, or actually the man on the couch, I should say, will be Carl Gustav Jung, the famous Swiss shaman, prophet, psychiatrist, who wrote, among many other books, this one, the Red Book, and that's the subject that we will go into today. We will be looking at Carl Jung's birth chart quite extensively, and then later we will look at a few charts that are good examples of critical moments in his life where you can really find some meaning in the asteroids. For example, in his 1913 period, when he was preparing for this book. In German, he called this period his Auseinandersetzung with the unconscious, and in English it's called the confrontation with the unconscious, which is a bit more confrontational, I guess. But Jung actually had a dialogue more or less with his unconscious, but you could also say it was his trip to hell, or his death trip. And he put a lot of remarkable experiences in his journal that he kept. I'll call that the Black Book, and that is full of dates, so we can actually do quite a bit of stuff, in a detective kind of way. We can, as a Sherlock Holmes, so to speak, we can go to a date and look at the chart and sniff out which asteroids are active or are telling a part of the story that's happening in Jung's life. So that's what we're going to do, and I will not be using any other astrological techniques that you really that are popular, like signs and houses and so on. I will be relying mostly on conjunctions. Conjunctions of asteroids and minor planets. I also want to say that Becca Tarnas, you might know her, she's an astrologer, very accomplished astrologer. She has also made a very good video about this same subject, but she looks at it from the perspective of planets, and she does that. She does a very good job at that, and she actually, in the video that she made, she actually has a chart or two that are identical to the charts that I will be looking at. So I really recommend that you look maybe first or maybe later, that you also watch the video by Becca Tarnas, because, well, it should go very well together. You might have guessed by now that you will get much more out of this video if you know a little something about Jung's life, or maybe even if you have read this book. Even if you have not read the book, I will try to introduce the characters, which is a lot of what's going on, and explain something about what Jung was going through. I'm not saying that you should really read this book, because it's a very difficult book. But if you want to know anything about Jung, then you should read it, then you should get it. And there are a few more interesting books that I would recommend. One is Memories, Dreams, Reflections, which is said to be an autobiography, but it's really not, because it has been heavily edited by the people around Jung. But still, it has a lot of crucial dates and also information, very useful information for the interpretation of the asteroids. Because, when you have asteroids, let's name a few popular ones like Ceres, Pallas, Juno, or more to the point, Vesta, which is an important asteroid for Jung. how are you going to interpret these? Because they are there's quite a wide range of meaning in this asteroid complex, you could call it. And how are you going to make the connection between the chart and real life? For that you need some information, and this is a very good source of information. And then here's another book. It's by Liz Green, Routledge. It's a nice book about the astrological world of the Red Book. Becca Tarnas also uses this in her video, and well, it's quite good. It's quite good, but a book that I really recommend is this one. If you want to get into the meaning of the Red Book, which is a difficult book to read, but if you want to really get into the meaning of it in a way that, well, let me put it like this: this is a monster of a book. Really, it is so good. It is the only book that I have found that truly does justice to what Jung was doing when he wrote his Red Book. So if you want to get into the whole Red Book story, this is my #1 recommendation for you. And finally, another source, also a good book, Saffron Rossi and Chiron Legris. They collected things that Jung said about astrology. So just quotes from, yeah, what have we got here? The conjunctio. All kinds of texts by Jung. A few mandala here. All kinds of texts by Jung, where here even André Barbeau. I don't know if you knew this, but Jung actually wrote with André Barbeau, who is a very famous French astrologer. So that's also quite interesting, and it also has a chart by the daughter of Jung, a chart analysis of Jung's birth chart. And this is funny because she even mentions Vesta, Pallas, Juno and Ceres, as you can see here. But what she made of it was great. She was not an asteroid expert. She said, yeah, well, there was always a lot of women around Jung, so it's logical that these four, you see them again, they are all around the sun. Here is Jung's sun. And she said, well, they are all, these women were always all around Jung, so that's what's happening there. Well, I will make a slightly different case. Before we can start looking at Jung's charts, I think I first have to say a few things about asteroids and their role, or maybe even their status in astrology. A lot of astrologers don't use them. I even get the feeling that a lot of astrologers don't like them, and probably because there are so many of them. So I have to tell you a little bit about how I approach the asteroids or minor planets, how I approach them in general, and how I will use them in this video. So one of the things that I will try to do is to make it as simple for you as possible, in the sense that there is, for example, a category of asteroids that I call name asteroids. Asteroids that simply have a name of a person, and I think these are like a perfect entry-level type of asteroid, because there's virtually no interpretation needed to get the picture. And I will demonstrate this now with this chart here. So that's a famous moment in American cinematography history. Will Smith slapping Chris Rock in the face during last year's Oscars ceremony. And well, that was something that everybody was talking about. And when you have these situations that everybody is talking about, you can bet that there are asteroids that are also talking about it. Because, you know, when you really look at it, the astrological sky is like a library full of stories. It is so filled with stories you wouldn't believe it. There's billions and billions of stories there, more stories than on the internet, so to speak. And this was a story that I actually did quite an extensive analysis of it, but I will now only point out this triple conjunction here of 3 asteroids, one named Oscar, one named Will, and one named Smither. And exactly at the moment that Will Smith got angry, these 3 asteroids were in a tight conjunction. And I mean, when I show something like this to people, I say, you know, why doubt astrology? Because this is so clear. You need zero interpretation here, unless you are a type, I don't know, maybe a skeptic, or certain zodiac signs might say, well, this is not exact. It is Oscar is spelled with a K, and Will is spelled with a double L, and it says Smither, not Smith. So, you know, that's not good enough. That's fraud. That's speculation. But I want to give you one principle here, which is that when you talk about name asteroids, these are asteroids that simply are names. Correct spelling is less important than making the right association. That's what's really the main thing here. And like I said, there are many more asteroids creating a whole story around this slab, but I won't go into them now. I will just go on to the next example, which is about Tony Wolff and also Henri Corbin. Now, if you don't know who these people are, that is again, yeah, well, you should know a little bit about Jung in order to follow what I'm talking about. But Tony Jung, she's on the photo here next to Carl Jung. What did I say, Tony Jung? I meant Tony Wolff. She was, how should I put this? They had a relationship, and Jung's wife knew about this, Emma. She knew about this relationship, so there was a kind of a triangle, but I mean, it's not really clear what happened there. But one thing is very clear, and that is that Tony Wolff was an important person for Carl Jung. And now, if you look at the asteroids here, you see an asteroid named Jung, and that is actually named after Carl Jung. So he has his own asteroid, which is always handy. And then there's a very tight conjunction with the correctly spelled Tony, which is also an asteroid. And this is the birth chart of Carl Jung. So we're talking about a lifelong thing here. This is not a transit, this is his birth chart. And then the name Wolff, also spelled correctly this time, is very, very close to the descendant. And you can also see here something else, which is also very interesting, meaning that the sun is also very close to the descendant. So it was the moment that Jung was born, the sun was just about setting, just about going under the horizon. And to make this story complete, Corbin, that refers to Henri Corbin. Henri Corbin is not my specialty, so I will not say too much about him, other than the stuff that you can find on the Wikipedia page, that he was a philosopher, but I think of him mainly as someone who was very much interested in Islamic Sufi tradition. And well, it's just one of those things that you find when you do research. In Peter Kingsley, in his book Catafalque, he says that Jung and Henri Corbin had a very good relationship. And a crucial quote that he gives is that Jung says that he had the idea that Henri Corbin was the only person he had ever met I mean, Jung met a lot of people, and he had a lot of people around him, the Jungians, the whole circle of Jungian students, let's call them, that were around him. And Jung said of Henri Corbin that he was the only person who ever gave him the feeling that that there was a really deep understanding. So you could say Henri Corbin was one of the very few people who really got Jung, who understood also the Red Book. Okay, so we have been looking at name asteroids, and I wanted to start with that just to show you that asteroid astrology can be very easy. I mean, these name asteroids, it's as simple as it gets in astrology. So I hope if you had any fears of asteroids or minor planets that it has been reduced a little bit. But of course, there's also the hard numbers that say there are more than 1 million asteroids in our solar system. So what are you going to do with those? Well, I wouldn't use them all, of course, but a very good way to reduce that huge number is to immediately throw out, let's say, 95 or more percent by only mostly looking at named asteroids. I mean, there are a few unnamed asteroids that are notorious, that have been analyzed very well, especially here in this book by Benjamin Adamah. He goes into unnamed asteroids and gives, here you see that, it's just numbers there. And Benjamin Adamah is I see him as a kind of an asteroid guru. He is someone who has definitely kick-started my exploration of asteroids. And this is a very thick volume. It actually has 950 different asteroids that he analyzes, and well, it's I mean, this guy is a genius. Let's not beat around the bush. He's Dutch. I've met him a few times. We have had discussions about asteroids, and I mean, his interpretations 80% of the time at least, or maybe almost 90% of the time, he's correct, and not just correct in the sense that he is not wrong, but he also manages, even for unnamed asteroids, to really get to the heart of the matter, and that's quite something. So there is all this information, but that might still be scary. I mean, he does 950 asteroids here, and you don't really need that amount. You know, you can whatever you can handle is what you can work with. One thing I do want to say is that you cannot just assume that asteroids will work the same way as you work with planets, because I see these cookbooks with asteroid stuff in it, and they just go on about asteroids in the first house and the second house and the third house. Well, personally, I'm very critical about that, because I'm not at all sure that the house system works with asteroids. What I am sure of is that it works when you are looking at conjunctions with planets, and also if you have an accurate birth time, conjunctions with the ascendant, midheaven. What also works is what I will be going into in this video is what is known under a lot of names, like the Arabian parts or the lots. I will be looking at the lot of fortune, which is a sensitive point. It is an abstract point, a mathematically derived point, and the lot of the diamond. I will be looking at those two. I would call those sensitive points for now. And another sensitive point that works, not always perfect, I mean, maybe not as strong as those conjunctions, but midpoints is also something that definitely works with asteroids. But I would be very, very careful with using houses. So you won't hear me talk about houses at all in this video. One thing also the software. Now that's a bit dramatic. I mean, astrology software in general is, I'm not going to rant here. I'm just going to say that I hope that during my lifetime I will see something that makes me happy. So far I haven't seen it yet. But the software that I will be using is a Russian software, ZET, and it works. But that's all I can say of it, because well, I actually used the 20,000, around 20,000 asteroids in that software, and it was just not built for that. It has this very strong Windows 95 vibe, like a lot of astrology software has, but this one definitely has it. And because I pump in so many asteroid ephemerids, it is it goes into a coma each time it has to load these asteroids. It just falls silent for 3 minutes or so, and sometimes when you're just working with the software, it blanks again. It's really a struggle. So if you think about doing more with asteroids, ZET I think is the way to go, especially if you want to have look at around 20,000 of them. But this software is really ancient and inefficiently programmed if you compare it to modern standards, and it doesn't look pretty. Before we can get into the charts by Jung, I need to make a few distinctions between different types of asteroids, because they're not all the same. I've just introduced the name asteroids, which is, I think, the most easy category to work with, very self-explanatory. Then we have a second category, which is also self-explanatory, but a little bit more wiggle room for interpretation. You have names like fast, wild, which is just simply about going fast or acting wild or stuff like that. And prudentia is a Latin word. It means prudence. Well, these words, I mean, next to it you see lie and veritas. Veritas is Latin for truth, and lie has to do with truth. So these are connected, and there are differences. There are definitely differences between those two, but still the interpretational bandwidth, if I can put it like that, is quite narrow. It's going to be about lies and truth, or maybe a lack of it, or maybe being allergic to lies or whatever, but it's going to be about that and not about something completely different. And when you go to the third category, that's where the interpretational bandwidth gets much wider, because you get asteroids that are connected to a whole complex of associations. Like, for example, I've already talked about Vesta, that it's very important for Jung. You see there Artemis, Chiron, Psyche, Leviathan. These are all names that have stories connected to them, and when you have that situation, there could be any element of the story could be either important or not so important in a certain chart. So there you really have to do some research or use your intuition, or somehow find out what elements of the story are more important and what elements of the story are less important. And I'll give an example of that when we get to Vesta in Jung's birth chart, so that will make it very clear for you. For now, I just want to say that this book here, Jin Shinoda Bolen, is something I really recommend if you want to get in those very popular asteroids, Ceres, Vesta, Pallas and Juno, that everybody uses, or at least even Great's birth chart has them. Great Jung. This book has a very good overview of all the female archetypes of female goddesses that lived on Mount Olympus, the place where Zeus and his family, so to speak, ruled the Greek world and the Roman world ancient times. The good thing about this book is that it really makes the connection. It categorizes the various archetypes in a very in a way that makes it very easy to understand, and it's just filled with good information. So if you want to know more about, let's see, let's get into the we have Artemis, Athena and Hestia as virgin goddesses, and then we have the vulnerable goddesses Hera, Demeter and Persephone, and she also goes into Aphrodite in a very good system that will really make it click for you. Astrologers might say, but wait, there's this book by Demetria George, who also wrote about Sirius, Vesta, you know, that's right. But if you look at her bibliography, you will see that she got a lot of information from this. And the point is, this book, I think, it's for me, it works better. So there's another recommendation if you want to get in those asteroids. And it will also give you an idea of how broad the spectrum is of meaning that you can look at. And I would even say that Jean Shinoda Boland, without realizing, I don't know if she realized it or not, but this is a book on astrology. You could say it is a book on goddesses and archetypes, but this is really a book about astrology. And that's how it works with all those archetypal subjects. It's not just these goddesses. It's also Chiron is also, you know, that's also Greek mythology. But for example, Leviathan, that's not Greek symbolism. That's a different type of symbolism. And anything that is connected to deep mythological stories, it needs a little bit more research. And then finally, number 4 is where it gets a little weird. Sometimes you get asteroids that have strange spellings. I have here one example that is Jung Li, because we have an asteroid Jung, but we also have an asteroid Jung Li. And it works too for Jung. Now, this is strange, because people who like exact spelling will hate this. But it works. Like I said before, the association is more important than the correct spelling. And for example, you see here plateau, but spelled in a French way with the T-E-A-U. It also refers to the Greek philosopher Plato. It's a completely different spelling, but it works. So what you really have to understand is that association is more important than correct spelling. But there's also names of asteroids that are unrelated to the meaning. And a good example of that is Elst Pizarro, which is quite important for Jung. You cannot derive any meaning from this name, but so what you have to do in that case is do as Benjamin Adamah does, and do some thorough research. Some asteroids you can only find the real meaning of by doing a lot of research. But that is only one category out of 4. So I would say we have 3 categories that are pretty safe for anyone to explore. And then the 4th category, I will give some more examples of that, is more for specialists, you could say. Okay, we're finally ready to start talking about Jung's birth chart, but first I have to tell you what happened when I did a little tea break in all this recording, because something quite synchronistically happened. 2 Jehovah Witnesses ring the doorbell, and they start talking about me, about how God and the prophets of God have promised us that suffering is just a temporary thing, and soon we will no longer need to suffer. Now, believe it or not, but this message is the exact opposite of what we're going to talk about when we dive into Jung's Red Book experience. The word prophet will come back then, but I just had to get this out of my system first so I can talk normally to you. Okay, here we have Jung's birth chart, and what you see already in small print, I will make it a bit bigger in a moment, is some of the name asteroids. But first I want to show you, give you a bit of an overview. Most importantly, we have the sun here, and like I said before, it is on the descendant, so it is in the twilight zone, and I think that is important. You can do some very poetical interpretations about this, but the fact is that the sun is, let's say, in a liminal space there, and if I use that word, maybe I will have said enough, because Jung's life was also in a large part taking place in a liminal space where he was in between the everyday experience and the more let's say metaphysical aspects of his own experience of life. You know, talking to his spirit guides, you could call them, like Philemon, or experiencing all kinds of things. He was really in touch with nature in the way that you know, shamans and people like that are in touch with nature. He didn't write a book about synchronicity for nothing. Jung was someone who understood the language of the wind going through the trees, of the animals, the sounds they make, and so on. He was getting a lot of stories out of that, and these stories are from the imaginal realm, something like that, to use Henry Corbin's word. But I think that whole idea is expressed quite nicely in the sense that Jung's sun is in that liminal space between above the horizon and below the horizon. And one more thing, the time that I use is such that it is exactly above the horizon, but the time that Great Jung used was a time where the sun is below the horizon. I don't remember exactly the minutes, but it is important for a few things. I mean, Hellenistic astrologers would find that very important for their sect business, but it is important for another thing. I mean, just simply having the right birth time is important, because if you don't have the right birth time, you cannot do a good analysis of the descendant, the ascendant, the midheaven, and all the other sensitive points connected with it. And well, one thing I want to say ahead of it, of the detailed analysis, is that I'm quite sure that I'm using the exact, the proper birth time, because of the huge amount of information that I find, for example, on the ascendant, and yeah, well, especially maybe the ascendant is the best case. Now, when it comes to name asteroids, I think we have already discussed the most important ones, and that's Jung, which is named after Carl Gustav Jung. And very close to that we have Tony, who we have already seen in that nice cozy picture with Jung. And when you say Jung is his name asteroid, his personal asteroid, like I said before, there is a second one, and that one is called Jung Lee. And well, I haven't checked it out, but my guess would be that it could be named after some Chinese astronomer or something. Not sure, but the fact of the matter is that it works, and you will see that in other charts that I will show you. Another name is Freud, and Freud is, of course, as famous as Jung. They were in the same. Freud was Jung's teacher. when you look at it in this chart, there is not a lot of it's not really a special place that Freud is occupying. I would say that Corbin has a more special place, and we already discussed this. How Peter Kingsley says that Corbin was for Jung the one person who really understood what Jung was all about. Goethe is a very important influence for Jung, and I can say something about that. It is opposite his Mars. Now, I won't go into how that actually works, because I don't want to do all these relations between planets and asteroid, if it is an opposition or a quintile or a trine. I prefer to only look at conjunctions, meaning if a asteroid is on the same spot as a planet, like in the case of Corbin. But still, you can see, you can count, for example, the number of important connections that asteroid Goethe is making, and then you see that there is an opposition to Mars, and also a quintile to the North Node, and well, there's something going on there. That's what I would say. And a more important one is when we look at the Moon. You see there a named asteroid named Herodias. Now, who is Herodias? You have to check, I guess. It's a person from the Bible. It is the mother of Salome. And if you know anything about the Red Book, you will know that Salome is an important person, or character, I should say, personalization, a character who appears in the Red Book. She appears in Jung's visions, and she has the role of Jung's soul. And Herodias is the mother of Salome. So what you see there is, I would say, is that there is a connection to the lunar, the feminine, the emotion. Not a direct connection, but there is, on some level, there is a connection here. Now, if I go a little bit from the Moon, a little bit to the left, past Neptune, we come to the lot of the daimon. And the daimon is again is a concept that you maybe should look up. I mean, Hellenistic astrologers are familiar with it, I think. There is some good literature about the daimon, and what it is a well, if you have no idea what a daimon is, I guess the first step to understanding this concept is to think of a Christian concept like guardian angels. It is similar in a way. These concepts are similar, but a guardian angel is of course a Christian thing, and a daimon is really well, it goes back to Greece, but it goes back further. I don't know what other cultures would call it, but it's about the idea that there is a mediation between the personal aspect, your ego, and your other parts of yourself, but that there is a mediator between you and the divine aspect of creation. And this daimon is really guiding you, but not just guiding you, also telling you what to do, and even it can be even more gripping than that. Jung used to say that he was literally in the grip of his daimon. It was a very important concept for him, and the fact that there is a lot of the daimon should of course alert us to look, if Jung says himself that he is in the grip of a daimon, let's take a look at the lot of the daimon and try to find out if we can find stuff there that is saying something about the way Jung experienced his personal daimon. And I think we have a hit here, a direct hit, because we have Leviathan and we have Plato. There is some more, but these are only the name asteroids that I'm looking at right now. Leviathan is a monster, a sea monster that that can symbolize hell. Let me put it like that, because like I said before, for Jung, this Red Book business, it was a journey into his personal hell. And you could say that he was swallowed by Leviathan, if you will. That is not a bad way to look at this one. And there's he painted Leviathan-like creatures. I think it says something about the way Jung was swallowed up by his subconscious, if I can put it like that for now. And what you see next to it is Plato. It is actually, the way I would read it is, in French, would be plateau. But like I said before, I hinted at it already, this one can also refer to Plato. And what I have learned from doing more charts and looking more often at the Plato asteroid is that the meaning here is very closely related to that, or that the how should I say, there tends to be an emphasis on the idea of Platonism, the ideas of the Platonic concept of an idea, the perfect forms that are inspiring life as it unfolds on a more modest physical plane. And that's where you talk about archetypes. I mean, archetypes and Platonic ideas seem to be in astrology, in asteroid astrology, seem to be very closely related. So I think of this place, the Lot of the Diamond, as a place where Jung went under in the belly of the whale, so to speak, and got in touch with archetypes, or fished, maybe he caught some archetypes. How do you want you can put it in many ways, but I hope you get the idea of what I'm getting at here. Then further to the left, we have Bergholz, and that refers to the Bergholzli clinic where Jung worked. And it's just a place where he worked, and it's again not on a very important spot in the chart. But I just want to show you that, I mean, there is a trine here to the descendant, but I don't think that is really crucial. But I just want to show you how for many words there are actually asteroids. Like Bergholz can function for Bergholzli, and I mean there are quite a few links here. It is, for example, opposite Constance, which is the name of the lake where Jung used to live, Lake Constance. So it's exactly opposite Bergholz. I don't think that has a lot of meaning per se, but what it is saying is that there is some. I wouldn't say it's tightly knit, but there are connections there, and some are more connected than others. I mean, Helvetia and Zurich, that's also things that you can look at. You know, Schopenhauer is something you can look at, just as Freud. And one asteroid will have more to say than the other. As, for example, Emma, which is the name of Jung's wife, not very connected here. So that's that might give some pause that Emma does not get as much recognition as Tony. Tony is conjunct Jung, you know. Emma isn't. That should give some pause. I was just talking about Herodias here, and I haven't finished that story yet. So if we go here, Salome. Salome is, like I said, one of the characters in the Red Book. And now you see next to it, you see logos, and you might say, "Oh, yeah, the Greeks and their logos." Here we go again. Is it about Saint John? Is it about I don't know? The logos is a, if I may say so, is a quite overused word, meaning word also. But if you do the research. There is something very funny you find on a note. I will put it in the image. I don't remember what page it was, but there's a note in the Red Book when Salomo when it's about Salome, where the editor of the Red Book says that for Jung, Elijah, which is the partner of Salome, was identified with the logos. Maybe I'm going too fast for people who haven't read the Red Book, but you have Salome and Elijah are two characters who Jung meets in his dreams. And Elijah is a prophet from the Old Testament, and Salome is his consort and functions as a soul. So we have a prophet and a soul there, two very important concepts to remember throughout the Red Book story. And there is this connection between Elijah and the logos. Again, I'll put the reference on the screen for you so you can find it. And that's just funny stuff, you know. That's like the coincidences that are quite juicy, I would say. So we have in a way we have there Elijah and Salome, who are two important characters, and then you also have the most famous character who Jung talks with in his active imagination world. The most important one is Philemon, and unfortunately there is no asteroid named Philemon. But if you say, well, that's close enough, we do find Philomela, not on a particularly important place, but it just so happens that it is conjunct Parmenides. And I think Peter Kingsley, I don't know if that man is into astrology, probably not, I'm not sure, but I think if he saw this, I think he would like that. Something much more important, though, is when we're talking about old school philosophers, pre-Socratics. Another thing that Peter Kingsley has a lot to say about pre-Socratic philosophers. You had, for example, Parmenides, but you also had Anaxagoras, and he is on the ascendant together with Plato. Now, Plato I've already discussed how you should think of that. Not so much in the sense of that Jung was a Platonist, because no, he wasn't. I think not in a true sense. And so, what about Anaxagoras? Well, you can say, well, it's just a coincidence that he's there, but I think, I mean, in general, I think it is consistent with the rest of the chart. Let me put it like that, that there would be a pre-Socratic philosopher on his ascendant. And if you say, well, what is the connection between Anaxagoras and Jung? I would say, well, I can only think of one thing, and I mean the key word that Anaxagoras is known for. When you ask a student of philosophy, they will start talking about nous. Nous is the Greek word for spirit, mental activity, mentation. Anyway, the opposite of physicalism. Let's put it like that. And I think you can probably. I'm not sure. I'm not a philosopher, you know. So don't take everything serious what I say about this. But I think I'm not completely wrong when I would say that Anaxagoras is an idealist. And I would say that Jung is also an idealist. I mean, if you want to read a good book about that, you would have to go to Bernardo Kastrup's analysis of Jung's metaphysics. And Bernardo Kastrup will definitely tell you that Jung is an idealist, and I think Anaxagoras might be representing that idealist perspective. And Plato is another case, but there you really should think about the concept of archetypes, in my opinion. Let's see, there's one left here, that's Wagner, that is Richard Wagner. Just oh, actually I forgot one, I see now. Let me put it in quickly, because you cannot see this, I think, but I'm putting in Brunhilde. It's a different screen that I'm using to type. There she is, Brunhilde. Because we have Brunhild, Wagner, and they are a trio together with Siegfried. Now, Siegfried and Brunhild are a couple, so to speak, from more Germanic and Norse mythology, and Wagner made his famous Ring des Nibelungen, where Siegfried, Brunhild, the Valkyries, you know, could put those in as well. The Walküre is the German name. And I am going to show you, here's the Walküre. I am going to show you later on a chart where Brunhild, the asteroids Brunhild, Siegfried and Wagner are together in a very tightly choreographed little dance, and that has to do with the death of the hero Siegfried. Here you see Walküre, the Valkyries, which was also a nickname for all the women around Jung. And actually, I should have put this in earlier. Actually, what you see here is more or less the thesis that great Jung had about women who are always around Jung. Well, their nickname was the Valkyries, and in German you say Walküre, or Old German, I don't know exactly. And you see how this is, well, this is 6 degrees 37, Jungli is 8 degrees, so they're 2 degrees apart. And if I'm strict, I should say, well, that's not good enough, because you have always in astrology this thing with orbs. And if you look, for example, at Brunhild and you look at Jupiter, you see that they are exactly, well, not exactly conjunct, but really, 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 really close. And with Walküre and Jungli, that is not so much the case. So there's always this idea of how close is close enough. And well, if you ask a specialist like Benjamin Adamah, he would say 1 degree and don't deviate from that. He has a rule that only for Eris, the minor planet Eris, he uses an orb of 2 degrees. But basically what you want is 1 degree to the left or 1 degree to the right, but that's it. And anything outside those borders is you can use it. I mean, you don't have to be that strict. I think this is significant in some sense. Okay, here's another chart, and this time I'm looking at primarily at the asteroids that are conjunct planets, and I also mention a few essential asteroids like Chiron, Eris, and Eros actually, because Jung talked a lot about that, and we also have the 4 famous ones. Ceres, Juno, Pallas, and Vesta. And first I want to say something about Vesta, because to me that is of these famous 4 the first asteroids that were discovered. Vesta is the quintessential Jung asteroid. Now, how should we see this? Because you might say, oh, I've seen a YouTube video and it said that Vesta is about repressed sexuality. And Jung had many female friends. How about that? Yeah, well, you are right. Vesta can be about repressed sexuality, but funny thing is, there might always be some asteroid that neutralizes a certain aspect of something. So, for example, if you would say Vesta if I'm going to argue that in this case Vesta is not about repressed sexuality at all. And if you say, yeah, but it is about repressed sexuality, I will say that we also have, if you know German, we also have conjunct the sun, a whole different type of thing called Vlegel, and that is more or less like a naughty boy. And you only have to look at Jung's eyes, the way on the pictures. Just look at his eyes, and you see a naughty boy. That's the Vlegel. And the Vlegel was also interested in the women around him, and that is not Vesta-like. But what is Vesta-like? Well, that's very simple. Just think of Bollingen. If you don't know what Bollingen is, Jung did his Red Book, and after the Red Book he became more contemplative, and he started to really feel a need for silence, and he became more like a hermit. And hermit is already a word that points in the direction of Vesta, Vesta's meaning, because who is Vesta? She is a Roman Greek goddess who represents the hearth. She keeps the home fire burning, is how I would say it. And she protects the home fire in a priestly kind of way, and she also has that hermit quality. And now if you look at Bollingen was a retreat that Jung built for himself, made of stone, no electricity, no water. The original plan was he only wanted a tower with, in the middle of that tower on the ground, a fireplace. Now it does not get more Vesta than that. I cannot think of anything more Vesta than Bollingen, Jung sitting at his fireplace in his hermit's tower. It's just 100% Vesta. Doesn't get more Vesta than that. And if you say, well, what about the repressed sexuality? I would say, well, we also have Vlegel here, and that might neutralize that certain aspect of the whole Vesta complex, which is broader than just that repressed sexuality cliche. We see something else here. This is Els Pizarro. I completely rely for this one on Benjamin Adamah. Again, this guy is a genius, and he has made some very insightful, written some very insightful books about, especially also the Plutinos, SDOs, and so on. This Els Pizarro is also one of the further out asteroids. I think probably no one knows about it, but it's important in the case of Jung. I colored it pink, and there's a few others that I colored pink as well. You see here Mors Somnus, that is conjunct Jupiter. You see Alcira, and these three they have something in common, and that's, in general, that's an important thing when you talk about asteroid astrology. You should try to think of these asteroids as related, as traveling in packs, as being synchronized. And well, what is the theme here for Els Pizarro and also Mors Somnus and Alcira? They are all connected to this kind of sixth sense, this intuition that you can have when you talk about shamans. For example, a shaman will know the language of the animals. Of course, with Jung, the famous example is, come on, the famous example is that bug, that scarab beetle that came knocking on his window. But there was much more with Jung. If you read other stuff, you find that he was very sensitive to what the wind says when it blows through the trees, what the sound of the water, the sound of birds. He was sensitive to that, and that is what Els Pizarro represents. It is a sensitivity to what's happening around you, and in that intuitive sense. A variation on that theme is Somnus, which is also a very far out planet. Again, in completely the story that Benjamin Adamah has about this one. It's not my own interpretation. I'm just sharing with you what Benjamin has discovered about this. And Somnus is can be compared to Els Pizarro, but it's where it works is in dreams. So it is about a heightened awareness of what is happening in your dreams. And this is, of course, he had prophetic dreams, he had visions, Jung had his active imagination, and Somnus is more about the dreamy part of this sensitivity, this heightened sensitivity. And then we finally have Algira here, which is not conjunct any planet. It is conjunct causals, which is, yeah, it sounds horrible, but trust me, it has to do with synchronicity, and specifically the causality aspect of synchronicity. I did some research on this one myself. But Algira is it's more connected to the freakier side of seeing ghosts, and how do you call it? Well, these funny things that happened to Jung when the doorbell started ringing just like that, and furniture wasn't moving really, but stuff like that ghosts can do in a haunted house. And of course we have the meeting between Jung and Freud, where there was suddenly this loud bang that Jung could feel, and he said there's coming another one, and bang, there was the second one. I'm going to show you that chart in a moment. And that is, Jung also visited seances and so on, and that is the theme of Algira. So I just want to show you there how these three are in an important way related. Algira in fact does have a trine to Sedna, which is a very, very, very important minor planet, and this is a nice grand trine with the Sun. So Algira is, although it is not conjunct a planet, it is indeed, in my opinion, important. This grand trine is important. And so we can go on. I mean, there is so much. Like I said, the universe is so full of stories that it's really incredible, and you find so much meaning. I would hope that this thing would do what I want. Yes, okay. Here we have Mercury, and here the theme with these green asteroids the ones that I colored green here, is visions. Photographica is an asteroid that has you can always trust on if there is an important image in the news, like recently this new picture of Uranus with the rings. Just check what Photographica is doing, and you saw that at that moment it was conjunct Jupiter, not conjunct Uranus, but conjunct Jupiter. Eye is about eyesight, and Ottilia is a Catholic, a Catholic patron saint. who rules, so to speak, as the astrologers say, who rules eyesight. So what we see here, if you think of Mercury in its in its capacity as the mental faculties, you see that vision is very important for Jung, and that's of course what active imagination is all about. It's about having visions. Then Venus, we see here triathlon. I should have colored this red because I gave a few asteroids a red color to indicate a Mars-like energy. And triathlon is a very Mars-like energy in the sense that it is about pushing yourself and keep going, stamina, and so on. And conjunct Venus, it says that he likes that. He just likes to keep on going. That's more or less how you could think of this. And then Odin is just one of the many gods that we find mythological references that we find. There's plenty of them. Wodan is also quite close to another planet. I don't remember which one. Here we have Uranus, and it's not speaking that clearly to me, I have to say. But I do get a feeling with Godiva, the naked, was it a queen? I'm not sure. The naked woman who sat on a horse and rode through some medieval town. And this Animu, which is good for you to know, can be used for anima and animus. That just works. And we have Pales here, which is again in Benjamin Adamah's vision. It is about going through certain a ritual type of cleansing, so to speak. So you see that Godiva has that same theme, and that was also a kind of a ritual cleansing in a way, but combined with nudity and animu. I think what you're seeing here is that for Jung, the anima was something that he could see right through because of that naked quality with Godiva, something like that. But it's not very strong. I'll admit it's not a very strong case here. Let's see what else. I want to demonstrate something else because here we have Freud conjunct Pluto, and I said earlier that Freud, the asteroid Freud, the minor planet Freud, is not in a very important place, but Freud is in a very important place, and the point is, well, who is this? Who is this referencing to? Is it Anna Freud or is it Sigmund Freud? I would say it's Sigmund Freud. And then it becomes very interesting. You can think of all kinds of things here because, first of all, Pluto is about revolutions. And of course, Freud was the original revolutionary when it comes to the subconscious, the discovery of the rediscovery of the unconscious part of human mentality. How do you say? And the human spirit. And well, what should we make of it? We can just leave it at that, or you can think of other theories that, in some sense, Jung eclipsed Freud, or maybe you can read that into it. I'm not sure, but it's significant. Let's just say that it's significant that Anna Freud is conjunct Pluto, and there's a few ways to interpret that. But what is clear is that. A important revolution is going on. That is without a doubt. Here the moon, we already looked at Herodias, but there's another one I want to show you. That is Prisma. and that one is really about analysis. So you should think of this triangle that has white light coming through it on the one side and the colors of the rainbow on the other side. That is a type of analysis, and well, this says something in combination with Herodias, the anima. It says something about analyzing all that stuff, you know. I'm not going to do all of those because then this video would take 2 hours, but I do want to point out Chiron, simply because it is not conjunct a planet, but Chiron is essential for Jung because it's the archetype of the wounded healer, also a teacher, don't forget that, and it's just important because it fits Jung. Even though Chiron itself is not conjunct anything else, it can stand alone, so to speak, and can still tell a message, tell a story. So what you do in this case is you simply zoom in on Chiron with the astrological microscope, and then what you find there is, for example, Bellona. Now, and Bellona should also have a red color because I use the red color for Mars-like energy, and Bellona is simply the female version of Mars. So there's a lot of energy there, and Industria means it almost points to a workaholic. So what you get here is a lot of effort, a lot of energy combined with the Chiron archetype. And well, yeah, that fits the story, I would say. I don't have to add too much about to that. It's just clear how much energy Jung put into the whole idea of being a healer and even a prophet. I think well, no, one more, because this is a point that is often forgotten. The center of the galaxy, I think it's important, and especially for Jung it's important because very simply what you can find if you look at the center of the galaxy is how someone relates to the idea of the divine, or maybe religion, but more broadly the idea of the divine. So how does Jung relate to the divine? Well, through mathesis. And what is that? It's not math, it is a very broad type of research, you know, like academics do. So really a broad research program, almost you could say, into the divine. And of course that is also, again, spot on in the case of Jung. Here is yet another way to look at Jung's birth chart. We're still looking at Jung's birth chart, but this time I've put in a little more stuff on the sensitive points. And well, I realize looking at the time that this video is going to be way too long, so I'll keep it short and sweet. I want to look at the ascendant, because people love the ascendant, of course. And we have already talked about Anaxagoras and Plato, but I want to just mention a few more. Biblia Lexa. Well, you might say, what is that? What is that? Well, it is actually an asteroid that is celebrating, so to speak, the Library of Alexandria. So the library that was burned down by Caesar, maybe not by Caesar, I'm not sure. I think Caesar gets too much indicated there. But anyway, Biblia Lexa is dedicated to the old and to the new Alexandrian library. And I think this is another one that is spot on. And more to the point even, this is telling me, in combination with Plato and in combination with the other asteroids on the ascendant, this is telling me that this birth time is correct. In other words, that the birth time that great Jung uses is not correct. So that's, well, I wouldn't say that this is a solid way to do rectification, but well, it comes close. It comes close, in my opinion. So, Biblia Lexa, representing the man of books who Jung was, who had a wonderful library at home full of everything from Gnostics to alchemy, the whole European tradition, a lot of Bible stuff, and he was a man. He was a library man, and that's it. No more than that. Bohemia. Well, you could say Jung was a bit of a bohemian, because that's what this asteroid is referring to, the idea of the bohemian. There's some more to it, but that's one of the things. And well, I think again of Bollingen, you know, and of course we have here hermitage, which has the word hermit in it. So you get there the idea of someone who is a bit of a hermit, and Bohemia is, I mean, it's not the first thing you think of with Jung, because he also worked in Zurich, which is a very big city, and where everything, I mean, just in the middle of modern life. But he definitely had this bohemian side of going into the country and being a bit of a, yeah, I would almost say hippie, but that's not a good word. But retreating in nature in his Bollingen. And then finally Gottesman. You need a little bit of you need to know a little bit of German to interpret this, but this is very simple. Basically, it's saying a man of God. And that's what Jung was. I mean, if you think about his Red Book, it is he calls it Liber Novus, and that is a direct reference to New Testament. His whole Red Book is about it's Christianity from the first to the last page. It's all about Christianity. This book, and how Jung tries to get maybe I mean, this Gottesman, you could also say that it refers to his father, who was a pastor and not a very successful one in the eyes of Jung. This whole complex of Christianity that Jung had to face in his Red Book period, there's a great German word for that, and that is Gottesman, a man of God. So that's quite simple. That's the ascendant, and I think the ascendant says a lot. If we look at the opposite, the descendant, we already noticed, first of all, that the sun is very close to the descendant, of course, but not under the horizon, it's above the horizon. Wolf was there from Tony, and then we also have Pain. Yeah, I just put it there. It's not that important, but Sphinx is important. Sphinx is for people who speak in riddles and who are a bit mysterious, and that's definitely also one side of Jung. He was very good at hiding his true intentions in all kinds of ways. He could lie and cheat a little bit. He could say, well, I'm really a scientist, I'm not interested in mysticism, I'm not a Gnostic, I'm not this, I'm not that, and the other way, a few weeks later he would give the complete opposite story. I think some of that is related to Sphinx, which means nebulous. You cannot catch it really well, and it's a bit mysterious what's really going on. That is what Sphinx is saying. Another one that I haven't shown you yet, but which is really crucial in my opinion for the idea that Tony Wolff, how to interpret Tony Wolff's role in Jung's life, is we get Hebe here. And now, if you don't know who Hebe is, it's another one of those Greek goddesses who lived. Actually, she lived on Mount Olympus, so she's quite a high standard there. But she was the servant of the gods, who poured ambrosia in their cups so that they could stay young and fit. and Hebe is related to young women and to the role of a servant, and it is conjunct both Jung and Tony. So I think in this case, there's different ways to look at it, of course. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm right here, but I would say that what we see here is that Tony and Hebe are closely related, very closely related in Jung's vision. So make of that what you want. I'm not a Tony Wolff specialist, but if any one of those Jungians is going to write a new article about Tony Wolff and her relationship with Jung, you might want to notice this. Hebe. It's just screaming at you there. Then there's the descendant. I find it very difficult to make something of this. I should say that Pluto is quite close to the descendant, and I mean 5, 8, and 5 degrees. To me, I'm used to working with small orbs because I do a lot of astrology, asteroid astrology. But you could say, of course, that Pluto is on the descendant, and that would, if you look at it like that, then you would say that Jung simply that he has a revolutionary effect on psychology. That's how I would put that. And I found some stuff here, but not that compelling. Not that compelling. Just a little mention here. It's very difficult to read, but I found the word armor here. Armor, I found that also on the Lot of the Diamond, and it's funny if you look up the word armor, how often it is actually used in the Red Book. It's quite amazing. So I just wanted to say that, and also echo is also connected to the Lot of the Diamond, and echo makes me think, this is a bit of not 100% sure, but I think echo has to do with personality number 1 and personality number 2, which is for people who know Jung, is a common idea. Jung always had a very strong feeling that he had 2 personalities. He wasn't schizo, but his 2 personalities were one was connected to the spirit of the times, and you should think of that as being right here, right now, and all that stuff. The zeitgeist, very much. The spirit of the times is very much the zeitgeist, and how you are connected to that. And then Jung also had a second personality that he also found in his mother, which was the spirit of the depths, and that is really the subconscious. The diamond, actually the diamond itself is also a part of the spirit of the depths. And if you see this echo here, I would actually say that echo is saying here that this at this Lot of the Diamond is the place where you find personality number 2. I told you before that I have my own method for calculating the strength of planets. It can also be used to calculate the strength of asteroids, and I always look at echo in a different context, which I will explain some other time, but let me just point out one thing, that in my perception echo is a relatively important asteroid. So I connect that to personality number 2, and armor is just, well, you can use armor in many ways, but if you count the amount of times it is used in the Red Book, it's there a lot. So that's just a nice little touch there. Fanatica, well, it says something about the zealousness, is that the word? The enormous amount of energy that went into the whole process of doing these doing this active imagination and then writing this book and working on it for how many years? 15 years or something? A long time, making all these paintings and so on. I'm not going to do the notes, but I will point out one of my favorite asteroids, which is Red Queen. I hope you can see it here, Red Queen, because it is an asteroid that is connected to the idea of losing your head, losing your mind, but also literally decapitation. And like for example, you find it in the chart of what's her name, Marie Antoinette, the Queen Consort of France. And you find it in the chart of Friedrich Nietzsche on his Mercury, in the sense of going mad. And here, it's difficult. Red Queen, here it is right on the midheaven, and it represents people who've lost it. Jung was, of course, working in a psychiatric hospital, and I think that is what Red Queen is saying there. We also have Gilgamesh, Ajax, some heroes there, and Gilgamesh, of course, the original hero of well, can I say Western culture? I'm not sure what culture I should how I should call it, but Gilgamesh is a pretty important hero from Mesopotamia, Sumeria, I'm not sure. The epos of Gilgamesh, one of the original hero stories. And Jung was, of course, going way back when he did his Red Book. He was going way back in his stories of heroes. He was not interested in when he met his when he did this active imagination, this whole process of the Red Book. He was not going to speak with Goethe or Schiller. No, he was speaking with the very old aspects of his psyche, and Gilgamesh would represent one of the first stories about heroes that has been committed to has been written down, I think. Okay, very quickly, last look at the birth chart of Jung, and this time I also wanted to give you the idea that you can think of a theme, and then you can say, well, let's see if this theme can be found in the chart. Let me explain to you what I mean. I mean, the simplest example is probably shadow here. If you know anything about Jung, you know that he introduced this concept of the shadow, the darker part of your psyche. And, well, you can say, what about it? Again, you can say, let's use that asteroid microscope, let's zoom in, and let's see what we can find there. And if you look at it, Phantomas is what I found there, and Bounty. I think Bounty is interesting in the sense that if the stuff that is in your shadow, if you put that into the light, that will be a big bounty for you. And Phantomas is more about a ghost appearance. It says something about the nature of this shadow, maybe. Don't want to go into it too deeply, but I just want to make clear that you can use these words. Shadow is not the only one. I mean, here, for example, Aesculapia, that is conjunct the south node, is the theme of Aesculapia is the medical profession and everything related to it, and that's very much Jung's profession, even though his specialty is psychiatric. But he started out doing just medical school, so to speak. So that's his job. And where do you find it? Well, you actually found it on the south node, which is quite something. And a last example that I want to give of this is related to the idea of active imagination, because I thought, well, what words can we use to link to active imagination that also happen to be names of asteroids? And if you use that, that's a bit like reverse engineering. If you use it that way, then you look, for example, at asteroid Fantasia, and it's not conjunct any important things, it's just there. But what you can always do is, again, zoom in and find what else is in the neighborhood of Fantasia, because, like I said before, these asteroids travel in packs, and you should try to think of them as a group thing. So what I found here quite interesting is hack, and hack is literally about hacking. I mean, in the modern sense of the word hacking. So you could say that active imagination is a way to hack your imagination, really. I think that's quite interesting. And Phaeton is well, it's more a mythological theme, but it's about almost spinning out of control, or at least going very fast. You should check out the myth if you want to know more about it. But you could say that Jung's fantasy was a fantasy on steroids. That's how I would put it here. So he hacked his fantasy, and it went on steroids, and it gave us this whole story of active imagination. Fantasia can also be like just imagining things, and dreamy, and it can have different meanings, but okay. Psyche is also, of course, if you're talking about a psychiatrist, you're talking about the psyche, you're talking about the soul, and what do you know? It's almost conjunct Pluto. So here we have a revolutionary look at the soul, and of course I didn't mention that the first time I talked about Pluto, but Pluto is of course also the ruler again of the realm where Jung had to go in order to find his wisdom. I mean, the Red Book is about a descent into hell, and here's your boy Pluto who rules hell. Another thing that you could talk about is the concept of dreams. And I just want to point out that if you're interested in the theme of dreams, there is hypnos that you can look at, but there's also somnium that you can look at. And if you look at somnium, it's actually conjunct Prometheus, which is again very nice. If you know anything about the mythology of Prometheus, you will see here that Jung is the hero of the hero who doesn't steal the fire from the gods, but who steals the wisdom from the dream, so to speak. Something like that. Something in that neighborhood. I think I'll leave it there. Oh wait, here is hypnos. Just show you to finish that thought. Hypnos is 28, 27 is conjunct Jung. So yeah, it's pretty obvious. So in that sense, you can look back. I don't know how I found hypnos. If it's amazing when you do these things. You know, when you do this type of analysis, you might think, well, if you know your Greek and Latin a little bit, you might think, yeah, somnium, hypnos. Let's see if that asteroid actually exists. You type it in, yeah, it exists. And what do you know? You find it on a place, in a place where you say, here's something going on. That's really how asteroid astrology works. it's a nice way of connecting dots and finding you stumble over the clues. Let me put it like that. It's not just 5, 10 clues. There's hundreds of clues if you really look. It's amazing how much stuff there is. Maybe one very last one here, Ixion. We just talked about Hebe, but Ixion is one of the most difficult asteroids there is. If you read Benjamin Adamah's story about Ixion, it's very involved, difficult to understand. I have Ixion myself in an important place in my chart, so I'm really interested in this one. But the point with Ixion is that if you look at its mythology, it is the first time that someone kills someone from his family. So what Ixion does, the really naughty thing that he does, is he kills his father-in-law. And he does much more naughty things after that. He also wants to seduce Hera, which is Zeus's wife. So Ixion gets in a lot of trouble, and Zeus punishes him. But the problem is, it is a very wide story, and so what are you going to focus on in the case of Ixion? That is not easy. And my idea is here that Ixion represents this old part of the search that Jung was on. Like I said, with Gilgamesh is an old hero. Ixion is an old school mythological person, the first one to kill. It's like Cain and Abel, you know, that type of stuff. Really ancient stuff, and it's the first. It's the dark side, it's the shadow side of creation, you know. So that's what we're talking about here, and it's again very close to Jung. And it says something about the depth of the search that Jung was on. He answered to Job and so on. That's what you should think of here. Where is that darkness coming from, and can I escape from it or not? You know, like these Jehovah people who just came knocking on my door. They wouldn't have anything to do with Ixion, not at all. They would not even consider him, but Jung was entering the depths of creation. He was. I mean, this is not about good and bad, but it's about very deep and troubling layers of the collective psyche that you have to face if you really want to become a wounded healer of Jung's stature. Okay, now I want to do something else. I want to look at specific moments in the life of Jung. And the first one is a meeting that Jung had with Freud in Vienna. And it was at a period when Jung and Freud were already separating, because when they first met, Jung thought of Freud as his teacher, as maybe even a father figure, and gradually Jung noticed that the differences between them were too big to sustain their relationship. And what happened, it's a funny story. Jung visits Freud, and there's always this problem that Freud has with with, let's say, parapsychological phenomena or something like that. Freud finds them interesting, maybe even hilarious, but he cannot take them serious, and he doesn't want that type of stuff to be the foundation of his psychological revolution. He wants to be a scientist and not get into seances and all that kind of stuff, weirdness. But what actually happens is quite weird, because Jung suddenly feels a very hot feeling in his chest, I'm not sure what he said, like molten iron or something like that. Maybe an explosive feeling in his chest, and a few seconds later there's a very loud bang in the room, maybe Jung's study or something. There's a wooden cupboard or something that a piece of wood in it breaks. It's something like that, and it produces a very loud bang. So it's let's say the keywords here are explosive, loud, also a signal, a sign. It is, for Jung, it is clearly a sign of, let's say, some mysterious paranormal force joining the conversation, so to speak. So these are the themes. It's related to the underworld. It is also related to the idea of the Cassandra complex, because Jung actually predicts that there will be a second bang, and that also happens. But Freud doesn't really believe him. So it's a bit like predicting stuff that is not being believed. How do you handle such a case if you are an asteroid detective and you want to see if there is anything you can find in the sky? Well, what I did is you can find the date, well, let's say within 24 hours is the accuracy. So that is enough for asteroids. It's obviously not enough for an ascendant or something like that. But for example, what I did is I looked at asteroids that have an explosive quality. Like, for example, we have here Tyson, which is the famous boxer who will punch. It's a punch that will be a knockout punch that has some similarity with that loud bang that was produced. You have here saltpeter, I don't know how you pronounce it, and there's another one here, also saltpeter. Now, this one is funny. Let's start with this one, because this is right on the money, I would say. We have the center of the galaxy. If you remember, that is the way that someone experiences the divine. And what this says is that the experience of the divine was explosive. That's really all it says. We have here the center of the galaxy, and we have saltpeter, which is the main ingredient of dynamite, if you remember. And this is very, very explosive. I don't know if you remember this one from one of the first charts I showed you, Alchira. It is about communicating with ghosts. Really, of these three that I showed you there, the three, about being sensitive to your surroundings and what else is going on except the usual stuff. This one is about these freaky ghosts that come to haunt your house. It's very much, and it's conjunct Uranus. So, I mean, doesn't get much clearer than that. This is very clear stuff. Wolfgang Pauli, I think, in my first video, you've probably not seen it, but in my first video I talk a lot about the Pauli effect and its relation to synchronicity. And what you see here is that Wolfgang Pauli, the asteroid Wolfgang Pauli, can symbolize this relationship with the Pauli effect. And it is actually conjunct Chiron. I would say that is another direct hit. And then, of course, we look at Freud. What is Freud doing? I didn't find a lot with Freud. What I did find is hilaritas, which is saying that he finds it amusing at best, but he's not impressed. He's, well, like a skeptic. He's approaching this business. And we also see Zeus here, which of course relates to the father figure. Zeus can also throw a mean thunderbolt, but I don't think we should go there. Bum. Bum is another asteroid that has to do with sudden loud explosions, but it's not doing a lot here. I talked about Alcira, and I talked about that in combination with Mors Somnus, if you remember, and that is more about the dream aspect of handling these weird phenomena. But although it is not completely, not as important here as Alcira, it still is conjunct, more or less. Let's see, 29, yeah, that is a conjunction. And Vesuvius is, I think, very much about the feeling that Jung has in his chest. And also lava, if you look at the Red Book, by the way, lava is also something that, I mean, the whole idea of an eruption of a volcano is something that is a theme in Jung's work, or at least in the Red Book. Let's see here. Els Pizarro, that's the other one, more related to synchronicities, that you just, the sensitivity for synchronicities. I think maybe deadwood is saying something here, like the idea of deadwood breaking and making a loud noise. At the same time, yeah, you see, yeah, I'm not going to try to tell you too much about this. I have some private associations here, but maybe deadwood is saying something. Hecate is a very famous ancient goddess of prophecy and so on, who has insight in present, past, and future. It's not. There is something going on here. I mean, there is. You could call this a sensitive spot in some sense. There is a group of asteroids here that are pointing to something, but it's a weak pointer. But there's something going on here. Then Salpêtrière, or however you pronounce it, is not too far away from Pluto, which is cute. And let's not forget Jungli, which is on the node, together with Tyson, which is the heavy knockout punch from Mike Tyson. And then let's look at Jung, just for the hell of it. Why not? Why not look at Jung? And you see his eye, his vision, his truth, and his archetypes. It's a mixed bag, but what I would say is that Veritas here, truth, is saying something, meaning that Jung has to follow his own truth. He cannot follow Freud's truth, because Freud is cutting off a whole part of the story that is essential for Jung. But Jung has to follow his own truth if he wants to get anywhere with his own theory. And we have an opposition here with Vesuvius and Mors Somnus. I think especially if you do this type of, if you're not doing a birth chart analysis, but if you are looking at just the sky at the moment that something is happening, you can look a little more at things like oppositions and so on. And I think this is saying quite a bit, this opposition. This is like an axis that has a lot of meaning packed into it. I mean, the reason why I talked about this group here, and I said, well, there is something going on, but I don't know exactly what it is. The reason why I looked at it is also because it is opposite Uranus and Alcira. So that was a reason for me to seriously investigate that point there, because Els Pizarro is there, which is important. And then there might be some more going on, but you're never sure. You just have to check and see what you find. Then Signe, or how you want to pronounce it, I don't care. Sign. It's just saying, it's like semiotics, you know. Semiotics is the science of signs. And that loud bang, the two loud bangs, they were signs. And what are they connected to? They are connected to Damocles, which is, the sword hanging above the king. I think that says something about the atmosphere. And who had the sword hanging above him, I'm not going to speculate on that, but I do think it says something about the atmosphere, because after this, it was not long after this that Jung and Freud broke up, and that is how you should see Damocles. And Justitia, I mean, that goes to Veritas, same idea. Jung has to I don't know how you say this in English. He has to stand up for his own convictions, and he has to. He cannot let Zeus, Freud, run over him and say, "You are my, you are the person who is going to make my work, take my work further." No, Jung has to do his own thing. And finally, we also have Bomben, which is, if you take away the E and the N, it's Americans and English-speaking people can understand it too. It's just a bomb, a loud bang, and that is also conjunct sign. So we have a sign, a loud bang, Damocles, the atmosphere for Jung and Freud, and Justitia. Well, make of that what you want. But to me, this is a quite accurate astrological picture of what was actually happening on the ground. And when I say that, you have to, of course, understand that in this analysis I use only 20, 30, 40 asteroids. And there, like I said, there are 20,000 asteroids. So this is not the only thing that is happening in the sky at this moment. There's much more happening. Like I said, thousands of stories at the same time happening. But on the day that Jung and Freud met, this was one of the stories that was clearly happening. So there you have it. Okay, the next dramatic story, I should say, because this is a thing that really gripped Jung. He was one day in 1913. It was still he was traveling by train. Not sure where he was going, but he was traveling by train, and suddenly he got a vision that was very dark. Well, actually, it was very red, and the red was blood. What actually happened, and what Jung found out much later, when the First World War actually started, Jung realized what was happening on the day that I show you this chart for. And what was happening to Jung was he had a premonition, more people had them at that time, of the First World War. And the way that was visualized in his mind's eye, in his vision, was it was very red, it was hellish, terrible, and there was war, and he saw the whole of Europe being covered in blood and in war. So the First World War. And well, you can ask yourself, how about visions and astrology? Can astrology point to people who have certain visions? I would say the answer is yes. And maybe let's start with a simple one. Here we have the asteroid named Flood, and Flood is conjunct Mercury, and Flood is he saw this flood of blood. That sounds a bit terrible if I say it like that, but it's comes quite close to what Jung was seeing in his vision actually. Next one, Cassandra. I already mentioned it, the Cassandra complex. It's the idea of Cassandra is Cassandra was a well, how should I say, a colleague of mine, in the sense that she did predictions. But the point with Cassandra was that people did not believe her. And well, not believing. Jung, let's first see that this Cassandra is conjunct the Sun. You see, this is 14 and here 15. It's really within 1 degree. And Jung wasn't sure at first what to make of his vision. He thought he was going mad. So it was a prophecy, or however you want to call it, a premonition, but he had not yet gotten the real meaning. That would only occur to him when he was in Scotland some months later, and when actually the First World War broke out. That was when he was kind of relieved, because he thought, well, I'm going mad. I'm seeing this crazy stuff, and I don't know what it means. Is it saying that I'm all this blood? It's not. It's not what you want to see. He was afraid, and I think the Cassandra there points to the fact that at first he did not know what this sign, this vision, what it actually meant. Then I want to point to there are a couple of asteroids that point to the color red, and we also have an asteroid that is called sanguine. And yeah, well, if you know a little bit about Latin languages, you will know that this stands for blood. Now look at this. When I saw this, it really creeped me. It creeped me out, really, for sure. Sanguine, which means blood, conjunct Pluto, and not just a little bit conjunct, but I mean exactly conjunct, and I think this is creepy stuff. I feel the goosebumps right now. And then we have a number of asteroids that point to the color red. We have, for example, reddish, which is quite close to Jupiter, to Pluto again. We have red man, close to Mars, which is of course the red one. And we have here, don't know, yeah, how serious you should take this one, but we even have red wine and Blutnacht. And Blutnacht, if you take away the N, the E and the R, you get Blut, which in German is blood. So here's a little more, and these two are also exactly conjunct. But I mean, this is the creepiest one. All that blood and destruction. Really creepy. So that's enough. That's quite enough for me to say. Well, visions, Jung's visions are in the sky as well. We're still in 1913, and after Jung had his vision of the flood, I think he was getting ready for his Red Book experience. He went in search of his soul, which is represented by Psyche and also by others. He came upon this idea of this technique, active imagination, that I've been talking about some more. I don't want to say I'm a specialist in that field. It's just you visualize stuff, and you do it in such a way that the stuff that you visualize in your mind's eye gets a life of its own, so that you can have a discussion with it, so to speak. Eine Auseinandersetzung, would German people say. And the first time he tried this technique, we have a date for that. I haven't been telling you a lot of dates, but I will put them on the screen afterward. You could say, well, maybe because his first attempt was not that successful. So, well, my reasoning then would be, if it was not that successful, maybe you cannot find a lot. But on the other hand, it was the first time he tried it, and firsts are in astrology are always interesting. So I looked for clues, and I found quite a few, I should say. So, for example, Aesculapia You may remember this one is about the medical profession, and in Jung's birth chart it is actually on the south node. So on this day we have a return of Aesculapia to its birth place, so to speak, which I would say is pretty well, it's not saying something. Asclepius is close to this and is conjunct Mercury. I mean, close in meaning. Another one that is a well-known couple from the birth chart is Somnium and Prometheus, if you remember. Not stealing the fire from the gods, but getting the wisdom from the dreams, as I just called it. Leviathan, that is the one that we found at the Lot of the Diamond. It is here at 28.7 and the Sun is at 26. It is, I would say in this case, it's close enough. And what you get there is a dive into the belly of the beast, so something like that. And then my soul, where are you, my soul? Well, the soul is exactly conjunct the sun, so that's as clear as it gets. I've looked at some other stuff that has to do with the visual aspect, like you might remember I that I mentioned earlier. And that is opposite Phantomos, which is a kind of a phantom, which is quite. I would say that has. I mean, seeing phantoms in your inner vision is not far away from what active imagination does. And then we also see Hypnos, which is very close to Mars. You should not look at this ascendant here, but Hypnos close to Mars. Mars is retrograde. I don't know if that says anything. I don't think so. Imago is connected to the idea of the image. Now I have to be honest. I did not do a lot of research on Imago, and I have a feeling that there's more to this one, but I'm not going to say any more than that it is related to visuals, and I need to check that asteroid some more before I say anything about it. But the fact that it is conjunct Neptune, I mean, any astrology. If you don't know astrology, then this will not say that much to you. But I mean, Mars penetrating the dream world, and Imago. I mean, Neptune is actually the ruler, as astrologers say, of the collective unconscious. And if you get that idea of Imago image very strong there, again, I need to do some more research, but this is saying something. All in all, I think I mean, Psyche is that should this should be in every book about the Red Book from now on. I would say that Psyche was conjunct the Sun when Jung was saying, my soul, where are you, my soul? Well, it was right on his Sun. It was not very far for him to. Finally, this one, Jung conjunct Plato, however you want to call it, meaning that Jung was dealing with the concept of archetypes. And then Fantasia, what is that doing? Not a lot. Okay, last chart for today. I'm not sure how long this video has been going on right now, but I'm quite sure that it's my longest video until today. Excuse me for the horrible visuals that I'm giving you, but this is what astrologers have to work with. I cannot do better. What you are looking at is two charts in one. And what is the event here? Well, first we have, I should say, you have an inner ring and we have an outer ring. And the inner ring, for example, this Mars here is part of the inner ring, this Saturn, and this is the way that this is Jung's birth chart. So for example, you see the Sun here, it is a little bit above the descendant. We have Uranus here, Venus, Mercury with Photographica, and so on. So this inner ring is Jung's birth chart. And what I'm going to show you now is what astrologers call a transit. And what is a transit? Well, it is you overlay the chart of a certain moment in time. You overlay that on the birth chart and you look at the connections between them. And well, what is the occasion? The occasion is a dream. Jung had visions, as we see, and astrology apparently can handle visions. Active imagination, we also saw a chart that shows how that works in astrology, and now we go to a dream, because even the world of dreams is part of the language of astrology. Which is something to think about in itself, you know, something to ponder, or how do you say? So what was the dream? Jung had already been testing his new method of active imagination, and he was getting some progress, but he got a real breakthrough in a dream. And in this dream, there are a few characters. We have Siegfried, who is here, and we have Brunhilde, who is here, and she is also here. And I have also added Wagner, who is also here. The point is that Siegfried has a symbolic meaning for Jung, and I have to explain that to you. Jung had all kinds of maps of the human psyche, and in those maps that changed throughout his career, he got a more refined idea of what the psyche looks like. And one part of the psyche, I'm just going to keep it very plain and simple, is the ego. And keep it. I'm sure Jungians will have a much more refined concept of this, but I'm just going to equate for now Siegfried with the ego, and specifically Jung's ego. Why is that? Well, he had. There's a whole story behind this, because we have talked about Tony Wolff, who was one of Jung's female assistants and also a crush or something like that, his helper, but he was definitely interested in Tony Wolff in many ways, and before he met Tony, he had another young lady who he met in his practice, and with this young lady, I forgot her name, I'll put it on the screen. He had a thing going where they would call each other Siegfried and Brunhilde. Now Siegfried is from the German and Norse mythology, the blonde people from the north. Siegfried is there a very important character in mythological stories. And the same goes for Brunhild. She is one of the Valkyries, again that name that was also given to the women who surrounded Jung. And Siegfried and Brunhild had a very difficult relationship. In the end, Brunhild wanted Siegfried killed, which is a whole story in itself. But anyway, Siegfried had a deep meaning for Jung, and one of the clues is this relation that he had with this woman, where they, were talking about each other in terms of Siegfried and Brunhild. But now Siegfried is not only that mythological person. He is also a symbol in Jung's mind for Jung's ego, and the idea is, to keep it as simple as possible, that this ego has to be killed, it has to die, in order for Jung's work with active imagination in the deeper layers of the collective unconscious, in order for that work to continue. So Siegfried has to die to make sure that the project of the Red Book can take its course. And what Jung tells this story, it is in the Red Book, it is in his, it's also in his autobiography. So Jung has this dream. He sees Siegfried, the blonde Germanic hero, riding, how do you call that? A chariot. And the chariot is made of the bones of the dead, and the dead are, of course, very important in the Red Book. It's all about the dead, basically, the whole Red Book. And Jung sees Siegfried approaching, and he has someone beside him, and a helper, so to speak. And what he and his helper do is, as soon as Siegfried in his chariot is within firing distance, they shoot an arrow, I think, and kill him. And well, this dramatic moment, the death of Siegfried, can we see it in the chart, yes or no? Well, if we look at Siegfried on the day that Jung had his dream, and we look here, we see Mars. So Siegfried is crossing Jung's natal Mars in astrological speak. And what Jung was doing when he was killing Siegfried, that is as Martian as you get. That is, he's murdering Siegfried, and the one planet that would do such a thing would be Mars. So you see here Siegfried being killed by Jung's Mars, so to speak. You also see another word here, Centaurs, which you should happen to know, is Greek for blonde. And Siegfried is described as blonde. That's just a funny detail there. And you also see Psyche quite close, but never mind that. What I want to emphasize is that the story does not stop with Siegfried transiting the natal Mars of Jung. That's not the only thing, because if we look at Brunhild here, we see that exactly the same time Brunhild and Plato, which you know is the archetype asteroid for Jung, are crossing Jung's sun. Exactly. So that's another thing that's going on there. And there's one final thing. I mean, the Ring des Nibelungen is the famous opera by Wagner. And so Wagner is also part of this story. And what you actually get is that Wagner is crossing Saturn. Also exactly. See that? So Wagner, in the same way that Siegfried gets destroyed, Wagner also gets destroyed. But Brunhild, she is not destroyed. I mean, she survives. She activates. And remember, Brunhild is also conjunct Jupiter here in Jung's birth chart. That was the longest video I've ever made. I need a snack, so I'm going to stop right now. Let's just finish this in a proper way, because the Red Book is a monumental book. I really want to say that. And the close connections between the sky and this book are also telling. You know, it's this is not just some book. This is a very, very, very special book by C.G. Jung, who is considered by Peter Kingsley, who I showed you before. Peter Kingsley, like I said, I think he has the best interpretation of the Red Book. And Peter Kingsley thinks of Jung as a prophet in the sense not only of the Bible, you know, not only of Isaiah and or how do you say Isaiah and Jeremiah and Elijah and so on, but also a prophet in the Western sense. And Peter Kingsley makes a connection with people like Parmenides, Empedocles, and so on, the pre-Socratic philosophers, maybe Heraclitus, definitely Pythagoras. And we're talking about Western culture, the roots of Western culture. We're talking about the human psyche and the deepest layers of the human psyche, like the stuff I told you about with the asteroid Ixion and so on. It's heavy stuff, and I just want to tell you that well, I don't know if I mean, I'm going to do more of these types of analysis of different people. It's not just, I mean, you can analyze all kinds of people. You can analyze musicians or painters or just every kind of people who you want to analyze. You can look at them through the asteroid lens. But I mean, the amount of stuff that I was able to get from this Red Book, that was exceptionally rich. And there's a reason for that, because there are a lot of keywords that you can work with, and a lot of names that you can work with. It's such a network of culture, Western culture, history, and philosophy and spirituality, all packed in one. And that's what you get from the Red Book. So it is a very rich and rewarding subject to look into. But if you want to know more about this book, that's what I wanted to say. Again, read Peter Kingsley, read Catafalque, and it really changed the way I looked at the Red Book. It opened up this book for me, so to speak. I also have to say one little thing, and that is that Peter Kingsley has a bit of a grim look on modern Western culture. I mean, the end of humanity here, and I think, I mean, I respect his point of view, but I think it's maybe a touch too much, a bit too dark for my taste. So I'm not recommending you this book because of Peter Kingsley's worldview, but I'm recommending you this book because it will deepen your insight in the Red Book by a factor of 10. And Peter Kingsley is just a man who knows what he's talking about. I suspect that he is that he has had similar experiences as Jung, and in that sense, he really knows what he's talking about. And that's a rare thing. It's really a rare thing. So check out this book. It was published in 2018. It's just recent. It's check it out. That's all I'm going to say. And well, for my next videos, finally, I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do, but you heard me talk, for example, about this trick or technique that I've developed to weigh which planet is most important. Definitely going to do a video on that, and also a few other tricks that I've come up with in the last few years. But what I actually plan to do is do more of these types of asteroid analysis, because I mean it's a wasteland. If you look at what asteroids, what astrologers do with asteroids, is, I mean, except for people like Benjamin Adamah and a few specialists, a lot of astrologers don't take it seriously, and I find that quite offending, to be honest. I mean, it's such a rich terrain. There is so much to explore there, and the good thing about asteroid astrology is that you have this, like I said, you have this narrow bandwidth of interpretation. And name asteroids speak for themselves. They just say, like, Hello, I'm here. Come on. Not now.